Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art Matrix. And we are here once again with Lauren Bhatt, uh, uh, I think life coach, as I called her last time. And she has had an interesting journey through her life, pivoting at various points. Very interesting pivots, which are very inspiring. And we'll delve into one of them, the work-life balance today. Uh, I think that's the pivot around where everything works. I'm Komal Gupta, and this is the Art Matrix. It's an intersection of creativity, art, and business ownership, business entrepreneurship, and everything that is in between. And so, welcome, Lauren. So lovely to have you with us once again.
Thanks for having me again.
So today's topic, this is a four-part series. We've covered self-care and mindfulness, and today we'll dive into work-life balance. It is quite a pressing topic these days, with especially in India, since there have been some instances where younger generation has not been able to cope and given in, and it is a very serious issue. And with mindset of trying to understand why this is happening. Uh, Lauren, I would like to ask you, um, work-life balance. There are a lot of layers there. See,
Mhm.
work can be professional, work can be at home, work can be on ourselves. There are layers, many layers. So how do you see this work-life balance in your life?
This couldn't have come at a better time for us to be talking about this topic
Mm,
because I used to think that I had work-life balance because I was doing everything. I was doing work, I
mm,
was life, I had a successful business, I had my first child at the time, but I didn't realize at the time that everything that I was doing was just absolutely killing my adrenals, frying my nervous system. I was deeply, deeply disconnected from myself. I wasn't taking pristine care of myself. I was like barely, barely managing to take care of myself.
mm. True.
I wasn't living very aligned with my values, the highest values. I wasn't parenting in the way that I knew I was capable of. But on the surface and to the outsider, I looked like I had great work-life balance because I did have the family, the husband, the child, the business, the success, the money.
Mm,
And it was all happening from sheer force of will, and it was not healthy. And I would definitely not define that as work-life balance anymore. Since then, and we have touched on this a little bit, I've gone like really, really far in the opposite direction. And I've been diving into yin energy, being in my feminine, being a mother,
mm,
really trying to take as much off my schedule as possible so that I can rediscover myself and work on myself and put self-care at the very heart of everything that I do, and self-love. And it's
mm,
only through that journey and through, like, I mean, it's been going on for a few years, but the last 1 year in particular, I have just not even thought about work. I've done little bits and pieces, but it has not been a priority. I've really laid a foundation for what pristine, immaculate self-care looks like, and living a life in line with my values. And through that journey, I've gone
mm,
very into my yin and into the feminine energy, and doing very little doing apart from, the obvious doing of running a household and raising kids, which is already a
mm.
lot.
Yes.
I don't know, the last couple of months, I've felt this real burning desire to get back to work. I've
Mm,
really felt the energy building, the fire is lit inside of me again, and I'm ready to get back into it. And I've had to assess my beautiful life and look at how can I create and bring in structures that support time for work and
mm,
more fire and yang energy so that I can
mm,
execute on the work and the creations that I want to that
mm,
I want to birth to the world. So I've started like really looking at that deeply, and this past week in particular, I've started to execute on it. And I really feel like I have started the journey of true work-life balance where I don't have to
Mm,
sacrifice myself. I don't have to sacrifice my family. I don't have to sacrifice anything in order to be able to work. And I can still
mm,
have balance. I've gone, I've spent most of my life in my yang and my masculine energy, doing all the things. I've spent the last couple of years in my yin energy, sometimes deeply so, not even wanting to do anything. And now marrying those two things together, which has always been my
mm,
goal at the very start, it's
mm,
happening and it's really exciting. So I'm excited to hear what questions you have for me and
mm.
to share some of the insights I've gained and how I'm going to make this all happen for myself.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What stood out for me while you were talking was force of will, just going at it just because it had to be done, it has to be done. Then pristine, immaculate lifestyle. Those are beautiful words. I mean, you are looking at a clean slate from where you've built the foundation, you've worked on yourself, and from there you will work on your work-life balance. And so when I was listening to you, what struck me was work-life harmony. You're working towards that. I think you started building on that. Would you like to share something more about this, the harmony that you want to create?
Well, it's interesting because work and business and money, those things actually aren't high on my list of personal values.
Hmm.
My highest values to live by are myself, being the best version of myself, family, and expression,
Hmm.
sharing my story. It's why I'm here on this podcast.
Yes.
So, so the
Okay.
first thing I really had to do was, I guess, re-enroll myself in the idea that work and business and money can help me
Hmm.
be those things. They can help me be a
True.
better version of myself. They can help my family to thrive more. They can help me with
Hmm.
more ways that I can express myself through hiring videographers or photographers and telling my stories in new ways. So
Hmm.
first I had to sort of tie in, how do I elevate these things on my list of values so that I can justify spending time there? Because at the
Hmm.
moment, a disproportionate amount of my time is spent on myself, my children, and expression, that the three top.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like the enrollment piece had to be there first,
Hmm.
but I also have to not sacrifice the other things. And, obviously I can't invent more hours in the day. I can't just bring in a useful little 6 hour block to work on top of everything
True.
else I'm. So how do
Hmm.
I juggle what I'm already doing or make the time even more potent when I'm working on myself or being present with my children or having that time on social media or being interviewed for a podcast? How can I make that time even more potent so that I do have tangible clock hours in my day where I can sit down and do the damn work? Because
Hmm.
I've in my business where
Hmm.
I was really working on energetics last year and law of attraction and hoping that the universe would open doors for me. And whilst, yes, it has, there's still work to be done. And that does not get done
True.
energetically by sitting at the beach doing breath work. I need to actually
Hmm.
sit my butt down and do that work.
Yes.
So
True.
sitting my butt down and doing that work, that to me is a discipline piece. And, I love and hate discipline, right? Like, I hate discipline because if I set myself a goal to be disciplined to work between the hours of X and Y, and I get to those hours and my energy is low, I'm hormonal, I'm
Hmm.
emotional, something is going on and I just don't have it in me, what do I do then? If I've made that promise to myself, then I really should sit
Hmm.
down and do the work. But if I sit down and do the work, I'm not being honest with myself. So
Hmm.
how do I find a way to use discipline, but still have, a little bit of room for honoring myself and my inner knowing?
Hmm.
And that's like, I think that's a really big piece and something that I'm
Hmm.
going to be exploring a lot of this year, because one thing is for sure, I do need the discipline piece. I do need it. If I just
Hmm.
fluff and float around and only work when I feel like it, it's just slow, slow, slow going. So what I've done,
Hmm.
I've created a window of 3 to 4 hours a day, Monday to Friday. And I've been able to do this by enrolling my husband in taking a little bit more parenting time and
Hmm.
giving me the time to get back into my business. And it's only a short-term thing, just until I launch my journaling practice that we've spoken about briefly a couple of times. But I just
Yes. Hmm.
put my butt down and do the work. And I've got
Hmm.
a list of the work that needs to happen. In fact, some of it is on the whiteboard
Ah, All right.
The
Okay.
work needs to get done. And
Ah.
I'm doing it. I've created the time. I've enrolled myself in how I can make it
Hmm.
value. I've had the conversation with my husband. I've put the time in my
Hmm.
calendar, physical clock hours in my calendar for the work to get done. And when those times come, I just sit my butt down and I work.
Hmm.
So I want that little bit of leeway to honor myself in
Hmm.
those moments. But for the most part, I'm going to sit my ass down and do that work.
True. True. You've been talking about, sitting down, discipline. But Lauren, isn't the very fact that self-care, you've put yourself through this whole process of self-care, that whole itself is so much of discipline. It is very difficult to discipline ourselves. We are the most difficult to manage ourselves, the inner being. We are always trying to rebel against something or the other. So I think that discipline, I think it'll crossover. It'll be there. I think it'll kind of cover all the business part also. And then again, discipline and connectedness between the interconnectivity between these two. Like you said, you would ask your family to take over more of the parenting role and all. So that's where the harmony comes in. That's where that music that you sing, that you're trying to build. So I would again ask balance and harmony. How do you see it? I see balance as a weight, the scale. You top it up here, it'll go down, and the other side remains on top. Harmony is more of a musical sense that everything is working in tandem. How do you see it? How do you see the balance? What difference do you see there?
Well, I have actually a prompt in my journal that
Mm,
I'm to sell to the public, but I've been using that practice myself for almost a year and a half. And one of the prompts in that practice each day is, how do you bring more balance into your life? So
mm,
if you're naturally inclined to be in your yin, how do you bring more yang? If you're naturally inclined to be in your yang, how do you bring more yin?
mm.
How can you bring in more joy and play and spontaneity into your day? So
Into your
balance,
thing.
yeah, balance for me, like I always think of balance in terms of energetics. And, I talk a lot about masculine and feminine energy, yin and yang energy. And I
Mm,
think most of us spend a huge amount of our time in yang energy because
mhm,
society and culture that we live in, there's just a lot to do. We don't live in big communities and villages where everybody has a
true.
role, all help each other. At the very least, like even if you're just a mom or just a stay-at-home parent, like running a household and raising children by yourself, that's more than one person's work.
True.
So there's so much yang in our life, so much doing. And even with all of my pristine, immaculate self-care, I still spend most of my time doing things, fetching things for
Mm,
my kids and, making them dinner and being in the kitchen and cleaning up after them and myself. So
mm,
I bring yin in with my self-care. I bring yin in with
mm,
work, with my swims at the beach, with my yoga practice. That's how I
mm,
like to bring balance energetically, making sure there's enough time where I'm inwards, connected, I'm switched off from the world, and it's just me, which means that because there's more time spent in yang, if you look at clock
mm,
out, not spending 8 hours on this and 8 hours on that, the yin time that I have needs to be potent, which is why I have practices like breath work. Breath work is a very efficient means of connecting to yourself and connecting to spirit. And it only takes 25 minutes for the daily practice that I do. Yoga,
mhm.
you can sit and do yoga in a very distracted state of mind. And
Yes.
certainly when I was younger, I used to do lots of distracted yoga, thinking about what I've got to do next.
Mm,
Now really make a point when I have that hour on the mat, I'm focused on my breath and I'm focused on my body. And that's it. How does my body feel? And when I notice my mind start to go to, so as soon as I finish yoga, I've got to do this, I come back into my breath. So although
mm,
I'm not perfect and no human is, for the most part, that hour on the mat is very, very potent time for me to be in yin. So that's how I would describe balance. And harmony, it's not really a term I'm that familiar with in regards to
mm,
this context. But I guess like a good example of harmony for me is also being so present in myself and connected to the people around me that even though I have an idea of how I want things to be, I'm able to quite seamlessly change based on what I think everyone needs. Because it's not just me, it's my husband, it's my
True.
parents, my children. A good example of that would be my kids are in daycare today. It's my daughter's last week of daycare before she starts school. And I was
Mm,
going to work this afternoon because I've made this promise to myself. I've got discipline every day. I'm going to sit down and do this 3 or 4 hour window. But given that we
mm,
have this call already scheduled in and it was sort of right in the middle of that work block, I thought
mm,
having a shorter work period or trying to do it with the kids racing around or just go to the library and sit there for an hour and a half. I'm like, the kids are actually going to need me this afternoon. And I think my husband would really appreciate a bit of extra time. So I sort of gauged
mm,
that. And I said to Emmanuel, you take the afternoon, I'll go and get the kids and I'll spend the afternoon with them. So that to me, it's harmony. That's even though I want to have the discipline and sit down and do this work, I
mm,
also I have children that rely on me, a husband that I need to balance his needs. And I actually want that time of connection. Family is a higher value for me than business. So
mm.
yeah, harmony is being open, embodied, and present to what is actually being presented to you, not how you want things to be, if that makes
True.
sense.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I love the word energetics, the yin and the yang in context of balance. That's a new perspective to look at it. And it makes more sense. I think with the yin and the yang, the balance is, the scale is equal.
Mm,
That's it. And with your interconnectivity, harmony, that's beautiful. With what is presented to you, not what you want. It's how you make the most of it. That's a beautiful line. And it makes you more present in the moment.
mm,
Harmony, I think as women, I think we look for harmony most of the time. We don't want conflict, especially in our families. And again, as a working woman, you've been there, you've done it, you've done everything, you've scaled the heights, and then you've gone down and found yourself, and now you're ready to scale the heights again. So, being out there in the professional world, harmony in that context, what would be for that high pressure job, that rush of adrenaline that you get when you score a deal, or the lows that you get when you lose a deal or something goes wrong? That is a different place to be in. So where does this all come in there? That harmony, that is so difficult to find at that point. Well, how do you see it?
honestly, I have done so much work on myself. I don't kid myself that I will be completely triggerless when I'm working and that I won't
Hmm.
be irritated at times when my expectations aren't met, or I won't be elated when something amazing happens. Like these things are
Hmm.
natural. However, I really don't think it's going to be the same as what it used to be. I'm a lot more grounded. I
Hmm.
I really do look at things as lessons, not failures or, wins.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
my journaling practice that I do every day, there's a section on, reflect on the day that you've had, focusing on the lessons, not, perceived
Hmm.
failures. And that's really rewired my brain because even if I've had something happen on the previous day that I've perceived as bad, everything's the meaning that we attach to it. When I
True.
look the lesson or what I could have learned through that. For me, a big trigger can be if I eat too much or if I eat foods that don't make me feel good, like sugar. And it's obviously not the same as business, but just for the purposes of an example, I've
Hmm.
come to really understand that when these things happen, but I give them space and reflection, I can
Hmm.
see it's just giving me more ammunition to change my behavior next time. And everything
Hmm.
in life is about changing behavior to do the things that work and flow. So,
True.
for example, I may launch my journal and it may totally flop and only 3 people buy it. And I could feel really disappointed by that because I've been dragging my heels and only working when it feels good. And now I've created all this change in my life in order to sit down and do like quite a large amount of work in order to get this thing
Hmm.
launched. If 3 people buy it, yeah, like I'm sure there'll be some temporary discomfort around that and perceived rejection.
Hmm.
Nobody loves me, and all the stories will come up. And I'm very familiar with a lot of my stories. Like a big one
Hmm.
I've noticed since I've becoming a parent is I've peaked. I've already peaked I'm never going to go back to where I was. So noticing that, like, I've got
Hmm.
such awareness that when those stories come up in a trigger, I can
Hmm.
be uncomfortable, but also be like, oh no, wait a minute, I already know that's not true. I've been here before. Like, I've been in this story before. I already know that's not true. So the
Hmm.
discomfort passed for me. And because I practice breath work every day, and breath
Hmm.
work is ordinarily regulating, not only
Hmm.
to regulate the nervous system and help you express emotions, but it connects me to my higher self, to my spirit. So if I sold 3 journals and it was a total flop, I would connect to my spirit and be like, okay, what's the lesson? Like, this isn't the thing. What else can I work on? What else do I want to birth? What other creation is there out there? What's in my heart? Like, where can I
Hmm.
where can I pivot from here? So I feel like the harmony is going to fall into place. Watch this space. Watch this. Yeah. But hopefully if I only sell 3 journals. But I don't
No,
know. I feel like I have such a beautiful, solid foundation now. I have
hmm.
such a great foundation. I know so much about myself, which, ironic because I'm selling the journal and the journal has been the thing that's given me all of this knowledge and this
Hmm.
wonderful foundation that I have. Like, I just don't think that there's much out there that can pop up and just really surprise me. Like when I started my
Hmm.
personal development journey, and it's so big and painful, and you go through the dark night of the soul, and all your shadows
True.
are awful, awful. Like, I've been in it for so long now, and I've found such better
Hmm.
coping mechanisms and I've got such good practices and anchors. Every day I have anchors. I just
Hmm.
don't get lost in stuff anymore, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
I feel like harmony should be something that's quite available to me.
All right. And that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Again, anchors, the word you used, the anchors, your practices are your anchors. And just to relate a personal experience, yesterday I was sitting in a restaurant all by myself. I had no phone, nothing. I was just sitting there, totally present, lost. And that's when I realized how, these practices are so good in grounding yourself. You're not affected by your surroundings. You're there yourself, your own being, and that's it. So I can totally relate with what you're saying, that harmony, finally, it's so hard to come by. And again, for the younger generation, see, uh, it's a very difficult time, uh, so many changes, so much of social media. What would you say to them again for self-care practices and how to ground themselves? They're in a flux right now.
I honestly think that a lot of people just need to slow down. You know,
Hmm.
I and this hasn't come up in our conversations, but when I had
Hmm.
William and I'd left the business and I was really floundering, I actually gave my iPhone up for a year. It's like this whole
Oh.
chapter. I downgraded to a flip phone. I really minimized
Hmm.
media. I stopped using Facebook completely. I stopped being so switched on. If somebody messaged me and I didn't
Hmm.
get it for 5 days, like,
All
you know,
right.
I had a flip phone. So if I wanted to message somebody back, I had to do the old A, B, C, D, E, F, like hit a button 3 times.
Okay.
So it
I
really
see.
to take away a huge distraction in my life to
Hmm.
enable me to have the space to find these anchors for myself. And I think
Hmm.
that if you don't give yourself space and figure out what anchors you and connects you to your spirit and your higher self and your power, if you don't even give yourself the time to do that, you're going to
Hmm.
spend your life just chasing your tail, completely in autopilot, completely unconscious. Like, if I were a young person today, that would be what I would be doing. I would be finding my foundation. And if that means not
Hmm.
being on social media for a year or delaying being on social media, I always talk about with my kids, if there's negativity coming into their life or I can see that they're deeply affected by social media, I will literally just move them out to the bushes in Zimbabwe. Like, I will pick up our whole family because this
Hmm.
stuff is going to affect children for the rest of their lives.
True.
So giving yourself that foundation and giving yourself that space to see yourself as separate from all of that. I had to discover this in my 40s as a mother, as a new mother with my second. You know,
Hmm.
given my time again and remembering that I did grow up just on the precipice before social media was coming in, I consider myself grateful for that. But yeah, I would be just at risk of alienating myself from my peer group. Put the phone away, put the social media away, give yourself time to know yourself outside of it, and establish practices and anchors that bring you back to yourself no matter what. This might be cold water therapy or breath work or yoga or whatever it is. Find them. A journaling practice. Hey, there's a great journal coming on the market soon. Whatever it is, right? Do this, set yourself up for the rest of your life. That would be my advice.
That's so relevant. Social media is a big distraction. The day I put my phone away for half the day, I'm so much at peace for the rest of the day. It's almost like it's calmed me down. I'm calmer and happier that way. I thank you so much, Lauren. Before we go, again, I would like to ask you, what would be your go-to word when you're not in harmony? What do you say to yourself? Like, kind of an affirmation. One line or anything you'd like to share.
Bring myself back into harmony, do you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I've got a few. I think, what would I say? If I'm really dysregulated and really discombobulated, it's not even really a word. I mean, one that I really like is be before do. I think you've seen me or heard me say that, be before do. Honestly, it's coming back into myself before I do anything else. It's interesting. Usually when you're the most dysregulated and in the worst place, that's when you're least able to see it. That's when you're like deeply subconscious, deeply in your unconscious, deeply in your autopilot. I've got a few little cues, things that I look out for. I notice when I'm very dysregulated that I become very inarticulate. I can't talk properly. I can't communicate how I feel or my needs properly. I get almost like a fuzzy feeling in the back of my head. I feel completely disconnected from my body. I don't know what's going on there. Like, these are like my tells, and I've kind of trained myself to notice when those things are happening, because when they happen, I know that I need to stop, drop, and like get to the beach or do breath work. Those things, those anchors. My journal as well. I have a top-up practice in there that I can use if I've already journaled for the day, but something's come up and like I just need a little
right.
back. So yeah, I have the cues, I have the tells, like I know when I'm really dysregulated. And one mantra might be before do, which is come back to myself before I do anything else. And then I use my best, most potent practices and anchors in order to on that. So I'll get to the beach, no phone ever. Well, a couple of days a week. Sometimes I take it for content, but mostly no. I'll do that breathwork sequence. I'll do the top-up journaling practice, whatever it is that I need. I'll bring myself back as soon as I notice I'm in that state.
All right. It's very interesting.
It's not quite the one-liner you were hoping for. I never have a one-liner.
No. It's okay. I love the description. I love the explanation, the words, whatever you told us. It makes it more clearer. One liner, I would probably, if you say two lines, I would probably guess on it the whole day. What was that? What was that? You explained it beautifully. There was a word, and you explained it beautifully. Thank you so much for sharing. Whenever we talk to you, Lauren, it's always like another so many interesting perspectives. They open out all of a sudden and they give you a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until the next time, Lauren, take care and see you soon.
Thank you.